Sarah Martinez wiped the sweat from her forehead as she adjusted her grip on the standard-issue M4 carbine. The Nevada desert sun beat down mercilessly on the military training facility, where dozens of soldiers were practicing their marksmanship skills. At 22 years old, Sarah stood barely 5 feet 4 inches tall, her slight frame often drawing skeptical glances from her fellow trainees. "Martinez, you're up next," Sergeant Williams called out, his voice carrying across the firing range. Sarah stepped forward, checking her weapon one final time. The target stood 800 meters away, a distance that challenged even experienced marksmen with standard equipment. As she settled into position, she could hear the whispered comments from the group behind her. "She can barely handle that carbine," one soldier muttered. "Should have stayed in the kitchen," another added with a snicker. Sarah's jaw tightened, but she remained focused on the task ahead. The first shot rang out, missing the target completely. Laughter erupted from several trainees. "Told you so," someone said loudly enough for her to hear. Sarah took a deep breath, adjusted her position, and fired again. This shot grazed the outer edge of the target, earning more derisive comments. After completing her round, Sarah approached Sergeant Williams. Her heart pounded as she prepared to make the request that had been building in her mind for weeks. "Sergeant, I'd like to request access to a precision rifle for tomorrow's long-range exercise." The laughter that followed was immediate and harsh. "You can't even hit a target with a carbine, Martinez," called out Private Johnson, a tall man from Texas who never missed an opportunity to remind everyone of his hunting background. "What makes you think you can handle real precision work?" "Maybe start with a BB gun first," added Corporal Stevens, causing another wave of laughter to ripple through the group. Sergeant Williams held up his hand for silence, though a smirk played at the corners of his mouth. "Martinez, precision rifles are for soldiers who've proven themselves with standard weapons first. You need to demonstrate basic competency before we move to advanced equipment." Sarah's face burned with embarrassment, but she stood her ground. "Sergeant, I believe I could perform better with the right equipment. The carbine doesn't suit my shooting style." This statement prompted even more laughter. "Shooting style?" Private Johnson scoffed. "What style is that? Missing everything?" "The only style you've got is amateur hour," Corporal Stevens added, high-fiving Johnson. Unknown to the group, General Robert Hayes had been observing the training session from a nearby observation tower. At 61 years old, the general was a decorated veteran with over 3 decades of military service. His weathered face bore the scars of multiple deployments, and his steel-gray eyes missed nothing that happened on his base. The general had been watching Sarah's performance with interest, noting details that the other soldiers and even Sergeant Williams had missed. While her shots with the carbine were indeed off target, there was something deliberate about her stance, her breathing pattern, and the way she adjusted her grip between shots. As the mocking continued below, General Hayes descended from the observation tower and walked toward the group. His approach was silent, his military bearing commanding immediate attention. When the soldiers noticed his presence, the laughter died instantly, and everyone snapped to attention. "As you were," the general said quietly, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. His eyes swept across the group before settling on Sarah. "Private Martinez, step forward." Sarah's heart raced as she moved to stand directly in front of the general. She could feel the eyes of every soldier boring into her back, wondering what kind of trouble she was about to face. "I understand you've requested access to a precision rifle," General Hayes said, his tone neutral but penetrating. "Can you tell me why you believe you're qualified for such equipment?" Sarah swallowed hard, knowing that her next words could either advance her military career or effectively end it. "Sir, I grew up on a ranch in Montana. My father taught me to shoot when I was 8 years old, but we primarily used long-range rifles for hunting and predator control. The carbine feels foreign to me, sir. Its balance and recoil pattern don't match what I've trained with my entire life." The general's expression remained unreadable. "And you believe this ranch experience translates to military precision shooting?" "Sir, I've been shooting targets at distances exceeding 1,000 meters since I was 12. I understand wind compensation, elevation adjustments, and environmental factors that affect long-range accuracy. I believe I can prove my capabilities if given the appropriate equipment." Private Johnson couldn't contain himself. "Sir, with all due respect, she missed an 800-meter target with a carbine. How's she going to handle precision work?" General Hayes turned his gaze to Johnson, and the young soldier immediately regretted speaking out of turn. "Private Johnson, are you an expert on marksmanship capabilities?" "No, sir, but, then, I suggest you remain silent until asked for your opinion." The general turned back to Sarah. "Private Martinez, precision shooting in the military requires more than childhood hunting experience. It requires discipline, patience, and the ability to perform under extreme pressure. Are you prepared for that level of responsibility?" "Yes, sir." "Absolutely, sir." General Hayes studied her for a long moment, his experienced eyes searching for any sign of doubt or false bravado. What he saw instead was a quiet determination that reminded him of some of the finest soldiers he'd served with over the years. "Very well, Private Martinez. Tomorrow morning, report to Range 7 at 0600 hours. You'll have one opportunity to demonstrate your claimed abilities. If you fail to meet the standards expected of a precision marksman, this conversation never happened, and you'll continue with standard infantry training. Is that understood?" "Yes, sir." "Thank you, sir." As the general walked away, the other soldiers stared at Sarah with a mixture of disbelief and resentment. The opportunity she'd just been granted was something most of them had been working toward for months. "You just made the biggest mistake of your military career," Corporal Stevens whispered to her as the group dispersed. "The general's going to make an example out of you tomorrow." That evening, Sarah lay in her bunk, staring at the ceiling as her fellow soldiers continued their taunts and predictions of her failure. She thought about her father, who had taught her that a rifle was an extension of the shooter's will, requiring respect, patience, and understanding. She remembered the countless hours they'd spent together on the ranch, learning to read wind patterns and understand how temperature and humidity affected bullet trajectory. Her thoughts were interrupted when Private Johnson approached her bunk. "Martinez, you still have time to back out of this. Tell the general you're sick or something. Save yourself the humiliation." Sarah turned to face him. "Why do you care what happens to me?" Johnson's expression softened slightly. "Look, I may give you a hard time, but I don't want to see you get crushed out there. The general doesn't give second chances, and precision shooting is no joke. These aren't the same rifles you used hunting rabbits back home." "I appreciate the concern," Sarah replied, "but I'm going through with it." Johnson shook his head and walked away. "Your funeral." As the barracks settled into silence, Sarah closed her eyes and visualized tomorrow's challenge. She knew that failure would mean more than just returning to standard infantry training. It would confirm every doubt, every mocking comment, and every assumption about her capabilities. But success would open doors she had only dreamed about. The next morning arrived with the harsh sound of reveille echoing across the base. Sarah dressed quickly and made her way to Range 7, arriving 15 minutes early as was her habit. The range was longer than the standard facilities, with targets positioned at various distances up to 1,500 meters. General Hayes was already present, standing beside a rifle case that Sarah didn't recognize. Next to him stood Master Sergeant Patricia Collins, a woman in her early 40s whose reputation as a precision shooting instructor was legendary throughout the military. "Private Martinez, reporting as ordered, sir," Sarah said, snapping to attention. "At ease, Private. This is Master Sergeant Collins. She'll be evaluating your performance today." Master Sergeant Collins stepped forward, her keen eyes assessing Sarah from head to toe. "Private, I want to be clear about what's expected today. You'll be shooting at targets ranging from 800 to 1,200 meters, using equipment that requires precise calibration and understanding. This isn't about lucky shots or beginner's luck. This is about demonstrating consistent accuracy under controlled conditions." "I understand, Master Sergeant." General Hayes opened the rifle case, revealing a weapon that made Sarah's breath catch in her throat. It was a custom precision rifle, clearly built for long-range accuracy, with an advanced scope and adjustable stock. The craftsmanship was immediately apparent, even to someone not familiar with military-grade equipment. "This rifle has been zeroed for standard conditions," Master Sergeant Collins explained. "You'll have 5 shots at each distance, with the expectation of achieving groupings within acceptable parameters. Do you have any questions about the equipment or the requirements?" Sarah examined the rifle carefully, noting its balance and the quality of its construction. It felt familiar in her hands, similar in weight and balance to the hunting rifles she'd grown up with.
Master Sergeant, may I ask what specific grouping parameters are considered acceptable? For 800 meters, groupings within 8 inches.
For 1000 meters, groupings within 10 inches.
For 1200 meters, groupings within 12 inches.
Additionally, you must achieve at least 4 out of 5 shots within those parameters at each distance. These were demanding standards, Sarah realized, but not impossible for someone with her background. She nodded her understanding and moved to the firing position. Word of the test had somehow spread through the barracks overnight, and a small crowd of soldiers had gathered at a respectful distance to watch. Sarah could see Private Johnson, Corporal Stevens, and Sergeant Williams among them, their expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed anticipation of her failure.
Sarah settled into position behind the rifle, adjusting the bipod and checking the scope settings.
The familiar weight and feel of a precision weapon brought back memories of countless mornings with her father, learning the fundamentals that had become second nature. "Whenever you're ready, Private," Master Sergeant Collins said, starting her stopwatch. Sarah controlled her breathing, studied the wind flags positioned along the range, and made minute adjustments to compensate for the light crosswind.
Her first shot at 800 meters struck the target dead center. The second shot landed slightly to the right, still well within the required parameters. By the fifth shot, she had achieved a grouping that would have impressed even experienced marksmen. The watching soldiers had grown quiet, their initial expectations of entertainment shifting to genuine surprise. Private Johnson found himself leaning forward, trying to see the target results more clearly.
"Moving to 1000 meters, Master Sergeant Collins announced. At this distance, the challenges increased significantly. Wind became a more critical factor, and the margin for error decreased substantially. Sarah took her time with each shot, making careful calculations and adjustments based on environmental conditions.
Her first shot struck slightly low and left of center. She adjusted her aim point and sent the second shot closer to the bull's eye.
The third and fourth shots were nearly identical in placement, creating a tight grouping. Her final shot completed a pattern that exceeded even Master Sergeant Collins's expectations. General Hayes had remained silent throughout the test, his expression unreadable. But Sarah noticed that he had moved closer to the spotting scope, clearly interested in observing her technique and results.
"Final distance, 1200 meters, Master Sergeant Collins called out."
This was the moment Sarah had been building toward.
At 1200 meters, even small errors in judgment or technique would be magnified dramatically.
She studied the target through her scope, noting how the heat shimmer from the desert floor affected her view. Her breathing became even more controlled, each inhale and exhale time to support her natural rhythm. She waited for a lull in the wind before taking her first shot. The bullet struck the target with satisfying precision. 4 more shots followed, each one placed with deliberate care. When the final shot was fired, Sarah remained in position for a moment, knowing that her military future had likely been determined by the pattern of holes in that distant target. Master Sergeant Collins walked to the spotting scope and spent several minutes examining the results. Her expression revealed nothing as she made notes on her clipboard.
Finally, she returned to where Sarah and General Hayes waited.
"Private Martinez," she began, her voice carrying a tone that Sarah couldn't quite interpret, "your performance today has been remarkable. All 3 groupings exceed the minimum requirements, with several shots achieving precision that would be commendable even for experienced snipers." The words hit Sarah like a physical force. She had not only passed the test but apparently exceeded expectations by a significant margin. Behind her, she could hear surprised murmurs from the watching soldiers. General Hayes stepped forward, his steel-gray eyes fixed on Sarah's face. For a moment, she thought she detected a hint of approval in his usually stern expression. Then, in a voice so quiet that only she and Master Sergeant Collins could hear, he murmured 2 words that would change everything.
"Black Talon mark."
The words meant nothing to Sarah, but she saw Master Sergeant Collins's eyes widen in surprise. Whatever Black Talon mark meant, it was clearly significant in ways that Sarah didn't yet understand. General Hayes continued in his normal voice, "Private Martinez, report to my office at 1400 hours.
Master Sergeant Collins will provide you with additional information about your new assignment."
As the general walked away, Sarah found herself surrounded by soldiers who had come to mock her failure but were now forced to acknowledge her unexpected success.
Private Johnson approached first, his earlier hostility replaced by grudging respect. "Martinez, I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "That was some incredible shooting.
Corporal Stevens nodded in agreement.
Where did you learn to shoot like that? Before Sarah could answer, Master Sergeant Collins called her aside. Private, we need to talk.
What you've demonstrated today goes beyond standard marksmanship skills.
The general wouldn't use those words lightly.
As they walked away from the range, Sarah realized that her military career had just taken a turn she could never have anticipated. The mocking and doubts of her fellow soldiers seemed like distant memories now, replaced by questions about what lay ahead and what Black Talon mark might mean for her future. The clock on General Hayes's office wall showed exactly 1400 hours when Sarah knocked on the door. Her dress uniform was immaculate, every button polished and every crease sharp. Despite her success at the range that morning, she felt nervous about this meeting, especially after Master Sergeant Collins's cryptic comments about the significance of the general's words. Enter, came the general's authoritative voice from inside. Sarah stepped into the office and was surprised to find she wasn't alone with the general. Master Sergeant Collins sat in one of the chairs facing the general's desk, and beside her sat a man Sarah didn't recognize. He appeared to be in his early 50s, wearing civilian clothes but carrying himself with the unmistakable bearing of military personnel. Private Martinez, take a seat, General Hayes gestured to the empty chair next to Master Sergeant Collins.
I'd like you to meet Colonel James Morrison, retired. He's here to discuss some opportunities that may be available to you. Colonel Morrison extended his hand as Sarah sat down.
His handshake was firm, and his eyes held the same intense quality she'd noticed in many experienced military personnel.
Private Martinez, your performance this morning was quite impressive. The general has briefed me on the details.
Thank you, sir, Sarah replied, still uncertain about why a retired colonel would be interested in her marksmanship test. General Hayes leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled in front of him. Private Martinez, when I said Black Talon mark this morning, I was referring to a very specific and highly classified program.
What I'm about to tell you cannot leave this room without explicit authorization. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
Black Talon is a special operations program that focuses on precision marksmanship in extreme conditions.
It's not a program that most soldiers even know exists, and fewer still are ever considered for selection. The candidates we recruit demonstrate exceptional abilities that go far beyond standard military training.
Sarah's mind raced as she tried to process this information. Sir, are you saying I'm being considered for this program? Colonel Morrison answered this time.
What we're saying is that your performance today suggests you might have the natural aptitude we look for.
But aptitude is only the beginning.
Black Talon operatives work in situations where a single shot can mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. They operate alone, often behind enemy lines, with no backup and no margin for error. The gravity of what they were describing began to sink in. Sarah had expected that her successful test might lead to assignment as a designated marksman or perhaps advanced sniper training. This was something entirely different. Master Sergeant Collins opened a folder that had been resting on her lap.
Sarah, may I call you Sarah? When Sarah nodded, she continued. I've been evaluating precision shooters for 15 years. What you demonstrated this morning wasn't just good shooting.
Your technique, your natural compensation for environmental factors, and your consistency under pressure indicate abilities that are extremely rare.
I don't understand, Master Sergeant. I just shot the way my father taught me.
That's exactly what makes you interesting, Colonel Morrison interjected. Most military snipers are trained to follow specific procedures and protocols. While effective, this training can sometimes interfere with natural instincts. You've developed your skills without formal military constraints, which means you haven't been programmed to think inside conventional parameters. General Hayes pulled a file from his desk drawer and opened it.
Private Martinez, we've done some research into your background.
Your father, Miguel Martinez, was quite a marksman himself during his time in the service, before he left the military to manage your family's ranch.
His service record shows some interesting assignments that he's never discussed, even with family. Sarah's eyes widened in surprise.
Her father had always been modest about his military service, describing it only as a few years in the army before he met her mother and settled down to ranch life. She'd never pressed him for details, assuming it had been routine service.
What kind of assignments, sir?
That's classified information that we can't share with you unless you're accepted into the program and receive appropriate clearance, General Hayes replied. But I will say that natural marksmanship ability sometimes runs in families, and your father's records suggest he had similar aptitudes to what you've demonstrated. Colonel Morrison leaned forward in his chair. Sarah, if you're interested in learning more about this opportunity, you would need to volunteer for a selection process that's extremely demanding, both physically and mentally. Most candidates don't complete it, and those who do find their lives changed in ways they never anticipated.
What would this selection process involve?
I can't give you specific details, Master Sergeant Collins answered, but I can tell you that it tests every aspect of your capabilities as a soldier and as a person. Physical endurance, mental resilience, tactical thinking, and, of course, marksmanship skills under conditions you've never experienced. General Hayes closed the file on his desk.
Private Martinez, this is not a decision that needs to be made today.
In fact, we strongly encourage you to think carefully about what you want from your military career. If you volunteer for Black Talon selection and are successful, your life becomes very different from that of a regular soldier. The missions are classified, the dangers are real, and the personal sacrifices are significant.
Sarah sat in silence for a moment, trying to absorb everything she'd heard.
That morning, she had simply wanted to prove that she could shoot accurately with appropriate equipment.
Now she was being offered an opportunity that she hadn't known existed. Sir, may I ask why you're considering me when there must be many soldiers with more experience and training?
Colonel Morrison smiled for the first time since the conversation began.
That's an excellent question, and it shows the kind of thinking we value.
Experience and training are important, but they're also available to our enemies. What we need are operatives who can think beyond conventional approaches, who can adapt to situations that no training manual has covered. Additionally, Master Sergeant Collins added, the psychological profile we look for is quite specific.
We need individuals who can operate independently for extended periods, who can make life and death decisions without hesitation, and who can maintain their humanity while doing a job that most people couldn't even imagine.
General Hayes stood up, indicating that the meeting was nearing its end.
Private Martinez, take 2 weeks to consider this opportunity.
During that time, you'll continue with your regular training, but Master Sergeant Collins will also provide you with some additional instruction that will give you a better idea of what might be expected. As Sarah stood to leave, Colonel Morrison handed her a business card with nothing but a phone number printed on it.
If you decide you're interested, call this number. Someone will contact you within 24 hours with instructions for the next step. Thank you, sir. All of you.
I need to ask though, if I decide not to pursue this, what happens?
Nothing, General Hayes replied. This conversation never happened, and you continue with standard infantry training.
Your performance today has already earned you a recommendation for advanced marksmanship training, which is an excellent career path in its own right. Sarah saluted and left the office, her mind spinning with questions and possibilities. As she walked across the base, she realized that other soldiers were looking at her differently. Word of her morning performance had clearly spread, and the mixture of respect and curiosity in their eyes was something she'd never experienced before. That evening, as she sat in the mess hall with her dinner, Private Johnson approached and asked to sit with her.
Martinez, can I ask you something?
Sure. This morning, when you were shooting, it looked like you were having a conversation with that rifle.
Like you knew exactly what it was going to do before you pulled the trigger. How do you explain that? Sarah considered the question carefully. My father always told me that shooting isn't about forcing the weapon to do what you want. It's about understanding what the weapon wants to do and working with it instead of against it. That sounds almost philosophical. Maybe it is. When I was growing up, we depended on accurate shooting for survival. Not just for hunting, but for protecting livestock from predators and sometimes for protection from other threats. My father taught me that a missed shot could mean the difference between eating and going hungry, or between life and death. Johnson nodded thoughtfully. That's a different mindset than what we learn here. Here, it's all about following procedures and meeting standards. Procedures are important, Sarah agreed, but they're not everything. Sometimes you have to trust your instincts and adapt to conditions that no procedure has accounted for. Over the following days, word of Sarah's meeting with the general spread through the barracks despite her efforts to keep it private. Soldiers approached her with questions she couldn't answer and speculation about special assignments that she couldn't confirm or deny. Master Sergeant Collins began providing the additional instruction that General Hayes had mentioned.
These sessions took place at different ranges around the base, each one designed to test Sarah's abilities under varying conditions. She found herself shooting in wind, rain, and extreme heat. She practiced from unstable platforms, through narrow openings, and at targets that appeared and disappeared within seconds. Each session revealed new challenges and pushed her skills in directions she'd never explored. Master Sergeant Collins provided minimal instruction, preferring to observe how Sarah adapted to each situation on her own. The goal, Master Sergeant Collins explained one afternoon as they walked back from a particularly difficult session, is to see how you think under pressure. Anyone can be trained to follow specific procedures. What we're looking for is someone who can create new solutions when the established procedures aren't enough.
Master Sergeant, can I ask you about your own experience? Have you been through the selection process you're preparing me for? Master Sergeant Collins paused before answering. I've been involved with the program for many years, but not as an operative. My role is identification and initial assessment of potential candidates. The actual operatives have experiences that they can't discuss, even with people like me.
That evening, Sarah called her parents from the base phone system. Her mother answered, and they chatted about life on the ranch and local news before Sarah asked to speak with her father.
Dad, I need to ask you something about your time in the army.
There was a long pause before her father responded.
What do you want to know, Nija?
I know you don't like talking about it, but some things have come up here that make me think your service might have been more significant than you've let on.
Another pause. Sarah, why are you asking about this now?
She couldn't tell him about the classified conversation or the opportunity she was considering, so she chose her words carefully. I'm being considered for some advanced training that might be related to marksmanship.
The instructors seem to think that I might have inherited certain abilities from you. Her father's voice became serious. Sarah, listen to me carefully. Whatever opportunities you're being offered, make sure you understand what you're getting into. Some doors, once you walk through them, you can never walk back through. Do you understand what I'm telling you?
I think so, Dad.
Can you tell me anything about what kind of assignments you had? No, Nija.
There are things I promised never to discuss, and I've kept those promises for over 20 years. But I will tell you this, if you're being offered the kind of opportunities one think you might be, they come with responsibilities and risks that most people are never asked to bear.
After the call ended, Sarah lay in her bunk thinking about her father's words.
The warning in his voice had been unmistakable, but so had been something else, a hint of pride, perhaps, or understanding of what she might be facing. The 2 weeks passed quickly, filled with regular training duties and the special sessions with Master Sergeant Collins. Sarah's performance with conventional weapons improved dramatically as she applied techniques she learned during the advanced instruction. Her fellow soldiers noticed the improvement and began treating her with a level of respect that had been absent before. Private Johnson, who had become something of a friend after their initial conflicts, approached her one evening with a serious expression.
Martinez, I don't know what kind of training you've been doing, but you're becoming a different soldier. There's something about the way you handle yourself now that reminds me of the special operations guys I met during my last deployment.
I'm just trying to get better at my job, Sarah replied.
It's more than that.
You move differently, you observe things differently, and, when you shoot now, it's like watching someone who's operating on a completely different level.
Whatever opportunities you're considering, I think you should go for them.
On the final day of her 2-week consideration period, Sarah found herself back at Range 7 with Master Sergeant Collins. This time, the challenges were unlike anything she'd experienced before. The targets were small, partially concealed, and positioned at extreme ranges.
Environmental conditions were deliberately made difficult with artificial wind and light patterns designed to interfere with normal sighting procedures.
Despite the challenges, Sarah found herself performing with a confidence and skill that surprised even her. Each shot seemed to flow naturally from her understanding of the conditions and her intuitive grasp of what the weapon needed to do. When the session ended, Master Sergeant Collins approached her with an expression of satisfaction. Sarah, you've progressed further in 2 weeks than most soldiers do in months of training. Whatever decision you make about your future, you should be proud of what you've accomplished. That evening, Sarah sat alone in the barracks, holding Colonel Morrison's business card. The phone number stared back at her, representing a choice that would determine the direction of her military career and, possibly, her entire life. She thought about her father's warning about doors that couldn't be walked back through. She considered the risks and responsibilities that came with the kind of work that General Hayes and Colonel Morrison had described. But she also thought about the sense of purpose and the opportunity to use her abilities in ways that could make a real difference. Around her, the barracks settled into its evening routine. Soldiers cleaned their equipment, wrote letters home, and prepared for another day of training. They were good soldiers pursuing honorable careers, but Sarah realized that she wanted something more. She wanted to walk through that door, even if she could never walk back through it. The next morning, Sarah made her way to a phone booth off base and dialed the number on Colonel Morrison's card. It rang twice before a professional voice answered. "This is Private Sarah Martinez," she said. "I'm calling about the Black Talon program. Private Martinez, we've been expecting your call. Please report to Building 7 Alpha on the base tomorrow morning at 0500 hours. Come prepared for extended field exercises and bring only essential personal items. Do you have any questions?" Sarah took a deep breath before answering. "No questions. I'll be there." As she hung up the phone, Sarah realized that her life as she'd known it was about to end, and whatever came next would be unlike anything she could imagine. The mocking voices that had doubted her abilities seemed like echoes from another lifetime. Tomorrow would begin a new chapter, one that would test everything she thought she knew about herself and her capabilities. The pre-dawn darkness was absolute as Sarah approached Building 7 Alpha at exactly 0500 hours. She carried a single duffel bag containing the essential items she'd been instructed to bring: basic toiletries, a change of clothes, and a few personal mementos including a photo of her family and the small silver cross her grandmother had given her. Building 7 Alpha was located in a section of the base that Sarah had never seen before, accessible only through a checkpoint that required special authorization. The structure itself was unremarkable from the outside, a simple concrete building with no windows and minimal signage. The only indication of its importance was the presence of armed guards who scrutinized her identification with unusual care. Inside, Sarah found herself in a sterile waiting room with 8 other soldiers, none of whom she recognized. The group included men and women of various ages and backgrounds, but they all shared a common quality: an alertness and physical confidence that suggested they were far from ordinary military personnel. A woman in her 30s with short auburn hair and sergeant's stripes approached Sarah. "You must be Martinez. I'm Sergeant Lisa Chen. I was selected for this program 6 months ago." She spoke quietly, her voice carrying a hint of accent that suggested Asian heritage. "What can you tell me about what we're getting into?" Sarah asked. Sergeant Chen glanced around the room before answering. "The selection process is unlike anything you've experienced in the military. It's designed to test not just your skills, but your ability to think, adapt, and survive under extreme conditions. Most people don't complete it." Before Sarah could ask more questions, a door opened and Master Sergeant Collins entered, followed by Colonel Morrison and 2 other individuals Sarah didn't recognize. One was a woman in her 40s with the bearing of someone accustomed to command, and the other was a man whose civilian clothes couldn't disguise his military background. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Black Talon selection," Colonel Morrison began. "For the next 4 weeks, you will be tested in ways that will challenge every aspect of your abilities as soldiers and as human beings. Some of you will excel, some will struggle, and some will choose to withdraw. There is no shame in any of these outcomes." The woman Sarah didn't recognize stepped forward. "I'm Major Rebecca Santos, and I'll be your primary instructor during the selection process. Before we begin, I want each of you to understand that everything you experience here is classified at the highest levels. You will not discuss it with anyone outside this program, regardless of whether you're ultimately selected or not." The unknown man spoke next. "I'm Dr. Michael Torres, and I'll be conducting psychological evaluations throughout your time here. These assessments are not designed to eliminate you, but rather to ensure that you understand the mental challenges associated with the work you're volunteering for." Master Sergeant Collins stepped forward with a clipboard. "Transportation will arrive in 30 minutes to take you to the training facility. This facility is located several hours from here and is completely isolated from outside contact. You will not be able to communicate with family or friends during the selection period." As they waited for transportation, Sarah struck up conversations with several other candidates. She learned that they came from diverse military backgrounds: infantry, special forces, military police, and even one helicopter pilot who had apparently demonstrated exceptional marksmanship abilities during combat missions. A young man named David Kim, who appeared to be of Korean descent, told her that he had been recruited after achieving record scores in urban warfare training. They told me the same thing they probably told you, that this opportunity doesn't come around often and that most people never even hear about it. The transportation turned out to be a military bus with windows that had been covered, preventing the candidates from seeing where they were being taken. The ride lasted approximately 3 hours, during which Major Santos briefed them on basic expectations and procedures. The selection process is divided into 4 phases, she explained as the bus traveled over increasingly rough roads. Physical conditioning and endurance, marksmanship under extreme conditions, tactical problem solving, and psychological evaluation. You must pass each phase to continue to the next one. When the bus finally stopped, Sarah and the other candidates found themselves at a facility that looked more like a research station than a military base. The buildings were modern but functional, surrounded by terrain that appeared to be desert mixed with rocky hills and sparse vegetation. Their first stop was a briefing room where they met additional instructors and received their initial assignments. Sarah was surprised to discover that the training cadre included civilians who were apparently contractors with specialized expertise in various aspects of the program. Dr. Torres conducted initial interviews with each candidate, asking questions that seemed designed to probe their motivations and mental state. When Sarah's turn came, she found herself in a small office furnished with just a desk, 2 chairs, and a recording device. "Sarah, tell me why you volunteered for this program," Dr. Torres began. "I want to use my abilities to make a difference. The kind of difference that matters." That's a very general answer. Can you be more specific about what making a difference means to you? Sarah considered the question carefully. "Growing up on a ranch, I learned that sometimes you have to do difficult things to protect what's important. I think there are situations where the right person with the right skills can prevent terrible things from happening." Dr. Torres made notes on a legal pad. "Have you considered what kind of personal costs might be associated with that level of responsibility? My father warned me about doors that you can't walk back through. I think I understand that choosing this path means accepting certain sacrifices." The interview continued for nearly an hour, covering topics ranging from her childhood experiences to her views on moral decision-making under pressure. Dr. Torres's questions were probing but not hostile, and Sarah got the impression that he was trying to understand her psychological makeup rather than trying to eliminate her from consideration. The physical conditioning phase began immediately after the interviews. Sarah and the other candidates were subjected to exercises that pushed their endurance, strength, and coordination to the limit. Unlike basic training, however, these exercises were designed to simulate real-world conditions rather than simply building general fitness. They crawled through obstacle courses in the dark, navigated difficult terrain while carrying heavy loads, and completed endurance runs in extreme heat. Sarah discovered that her ranch background had given her advantages she hadn't expected. She was accustomed to physical work in harsh conditions and had developed the mental toughness needed to push through discomfort and exhaustion. Sergeant Chen, who had befriended Sarah during the first day, proved to be exceptionally strong and fast. "I grew up in San Francisco's Chinatown," she explained during a brief rest period. "My parents owned a restaurant, and I worked there from the time I could carry dishes. Later, I got into competitive martial arts. That taught me that physical limits are usually mental limits in disguise." David Kim struggled more with the physical challenges, but he demonstrated remarkable persistence. Even when it was clear that he was exhausted, he continued pushing himself to complete each exercise. Sarah began to understand that the instructors were observing not just their physical capabilities, but their responses to adversity. On the 3rd day, they began marksmanship training under conditions that made Sarah's previous instruction with Master Sergeant Collins seem simple by comparison. They shot in complete darkness using night vision equipment, fired from moving platforms, and engaged targets while under simulated stress conditions that included loud noises, smoke, and time pressure. Major Santos personally supervised this phase of training, and Sarah quickly realized that the Major's expertise was extraordinary. She demonstrated shooting techniques and tactical concepts that were far beyond anything Sarah had encountered, even during her advanced instruction. Traditional sniper training focuses on precision under controlled conditions, Major Santos explained as they prepared for a particularly challenging exercise. Black Talon operatives must be able to achieve the same precision under chaotic, unpredictable conditions where a single shot may be the only opportunity to complete the mission. The exercise involved engaging multiple targets at various distances while navigating through a complex obstacle course. The targets appeared and disappeared on unpredictable schedules, and candidates had to identify which targets were legitimate threats versus innocent civilians represented by different types of silhouettes. Sarah found herself drawing on skills and instincts she hadn't known she possessed. The training seemed to unlock abilities that went beyond her conscious knowledge, as if her body and mind were responding to challenges they had been preparing for without her awareness. During one particularly difficult exercise, she found herself in a simulated urban environment with limited visibility and multiple moving targets. As she moved through the exercise, she experienced something she had never felt before, a sense of absolute clarity where time seemed to slow down and every detail of her environment became crystal clear. When the exercise ended, Major Santos approached her with an expression of interest. "Sarah, describe what you experienced during that last scenario." It felt like everything became very clear and simple, even though the situation was complex.
I could see patterns and opportunities that weren't obvious before. Major Santos nodded.
That's what we call operational awareness, the ability to process complex information rapidly and make correct decisions under extreme pressure. It's a quality that can't be taught, only recognized and developed.
As the days passed, the candidate pool began to shrink.
Some individuals withdrew voluntarily when they realized that the demands exceeded their expectations. Others were eliminated when they failed to meet the standards required for advancement to the next phase. David Kim was eliminated during the second week after struggling with the advanced marksmanship requirements. Before he left, he sought out Sarah to say goodbye. "I wanted to do this more than anything I've ever wanted in my life," he told her.
"But I can see that you have something I don't have. You belong here."
Sergeant Chen continued to excel in all phases of training, and she and Sarah formed a partnership during exercises that required teamwork. They discovered that their different backgrounds and skills complemented each other effectively. "You have an intuitive understanding of shooting that I've never seen," Chen told Sarah during a break between exercises.
"It's like you and the rifle are having a conversation that the rest of us can't hear."
The tactical problem-solving phase introduced challenges that required not just individual skills, but the ability to think strategically about complex scenarios. Candidates were presented with simulated missions that had no obvious solutions and were required to develop approaches that balanced multiple competing objectives. One exercise involved a scenario where they had to neutralize a high-value target in an urban environment while minimizing civilian casualties and avoiding detection by hostile security forces. The scenario was presented through detailed briefings, maps, and intelligence reports, and candidates had to develop comprehensive plans that addressed every aspect of the mission. Sarah found herself thinking about these problems in ways that surprised her. She considered not just the immediate tactical requirements, but the broader implications of various approaches. Her solutions often involved unconventional thinking that impressed the instructors while achieving the mission objectives. Dr. Torres continued his psychological evaluations throughout the process, observing how candidates responded to stress, failure, and success. His sessions with Sarah became more detailed as he explored her motivations and mental resilience. "You've demonstrated exceptional adaptation to the training," he told her during one session.
"But I want to make sure you understand what operational deployment actually involves.
The missions you would undertake often require you to make life and death decisions with incomplete information and no opportunity for consultation with supervisors." "I understand that responsibility comes with the assignment," Sarah replied.
"My father taught me that some decisions can't be shared or delegated."
As the third week began, only 6 candidates remained from the original 9. In addition to Sarah and Sergeant Chen, the survivors included 2 Special Forces veterans named Marcus Thompson and Janet Walsh, an Air Force security specialist named Robert Cruz, and a Marine named Angela Foster who had impressed everyone with her tactical thinking abilities. The final week introduced live-fire exercises that simulated actual mission conditions.
These exercises were conducted with real ammunition in environments designed to replicate the kind of challenges that Black Talon operatives would face in actual deployments.
Sarah found herself working with equipment that was far more advanced than anything she had seen before: rifles with sophisticated optical systems, communication gear that allowed for real-time coordination, and surveillance technology that provided detailed information about target areas. During one exercise, she was required to infiltrate a simulated enemy compound, gather intelligence, and eliminate a specific target while avoiding detection by roving patrols. The exercise lasted 18 hours and required her to remain hidden in uncomfortable positions for extended periods while waiting for the right opportunity to complete her mission. When she finally took the shot that completed the exercise, Sarah felt a profound sense of satisfaction that went beyond simple accomplishment. She realized that she had found her calling, work that utilized all of her abilities in service of something larger than herself. Major Santos debriefed her personally after the exercise. "Sarah, your performance during this selection process has been exceptional. You've demonstrated not just technical skills, but the kind of judgment and adaptability that we need in our operatives."
Does that mean I've been selected for the program?
That decision will be made after final evaluations are completed for all remaining candidates. But I can tell you that your prospects are very good. That evening, as the 6 remaining candidates shared dinner in the facility's small mess hall, the conversation turned to what they had learned about themselves during the process. "I thought I knew what I was capable of when I arrived here," Marcus Thompson said. "But this experience has shown me abilities I didn't know I had."
Angela Foster nodded in agreement.
"It's also shown me what kind of person I want to become.
Even if I'm not selected, I'll never be the same soldier I was before."
Sarah looked around the table at people who had become more than fellow candidates, they had become comrades who had shared experiences that most people would never understand.
Regardless of what happened next, these relationships would remain important to her.
The final day of selection arrived with a comprehensive evaluation that tested everything they had learned over the previous 4 weeks.
Candidates were required to plan and execute a complex mission that incorporated elements from every phase of their training.
Sarah's mission involved infiltrating a defended position, gathering specific intelligence, and eliminating 2 high-value targets before extracting without detection. The scenario was designed to be nearly impossible, requiring perfect execution and innovative thinking to achieve success. As she prepared for the mission, Sarah reflected on how much she had changed since that morning when her fellow soldiers had mocked her request for a precision rifle. The person she had become during these 4 weeks felt like a natural evolution of abilities she had always possessed but never fully understood. The mission itself unfolded like a complex dance where every move had consequences and every decision carried the weight of success or failure. Sarah found herself operating with a level of confidence and capability that felt both new and familiar, as if she were finally becoming who she had always been meant to be. When the exercise ended with successful completion of all objectives, Sarah felt a sense of completion that went beyond simple pride in achievement. She had proven to herself that she could meet any challenge and overcome any obstacle through skill, determination, and clear thinking. The morning after the final evaluation, Sarah and the remaining candidates were assembled in the main briefing room where their journey had begun 4 weeks earlier. The atmosphere was tense with anticipation as they waited to learn who would be selected for the Black Talon program. Colonel Morrison entered the room accompanied by Major Santos, Master Sergeant Collins, and Dr. Torres. Their expressions revealed nothing about the decisions that had been made, and Sarah found herself holding her breath as Colonel Morrison prepared to speak. "Ladies and gentlemen, the past 4 weeks have been an extraordinary demonstration of dedication, skill, and personal growth," he began. "Each of you has exceeded expectations and proven yourselves worthy of consideration for this program. However, operational requirements mean that we can only select a limited number of new operatives at this time." He paused, looking at each candidate individually before continuing. "The following individuals have been selected for immediate assignment to Black Talon operations: Sergeant Lisa Chen, Private Sarah Martinez, and Staff Sergeant Marcus Thompson." Sarah felt a surge of emotion that combined relief, pride, and anticipation. She had been selected for the program that would define the rest of her military career. Beside her, Sergeant Chen's face broke into a broad smile, while Marcus Thompson simply nodded with quiet satisfaction. Colonel Morrison continued addressing the 3 candidates who had not been selected. "Master Sergeant Foster, Corporal Cruz, and Sergeant Walsh, your performance during this selection process has been exemplary. You will be returning to your units with commendations for exceptional service and recommendations for advanced training opportunities that will benefit your career development." As the unselected candidates prepared to leave, Angela Foster approached Sarah with a handshake and genuine smile. "You earned this, Martinez. Make the most of it." After the departures, the 3 newly selected operatives found themselves alone with the instruction cadre for a more detailed briefing about their new assignments. Major Santos opened a classified folder and spread several documents across the table. "Your training as Black Talon operatives begins immediately, but it will be conducted individually rather than as a group. Each of you will be assigned to work with experienced operatives who will serve as mentors during your initial missions. Dr. Torres added, the transition from candidate to operational status involves psychological adjustments that are unique to each individual. You'll continue working with me to ensure that you're prepared for the mental challenges associated with your new responsibilities.
Sarah raised her hand. When do we learn about our first assignments?
Colonel Morrison answered, within the next 72 hours, each of you will receive detailed briefings about your initial missions.
These will be real operations with actual consequences, not training exercises.
The preparation you've received has been extensive, but nothing fully prepares you for the reality of operational deployment. Over the following days, Sarah underwent intensive briefings about Black Talon procedures, communication protocols, and the support systems available to operatives in the field. She learned about equipment that existed only in classified inventories and techniques that were unknown outside the special operations community. Her mentor was introduced to her on the third day, a woman in her early 30s named Captain Elena Rodriguez, who had been a Black Talon operative for 6 years. Captain Rodriguez had a quiet confidence that reminded Sarah of her father, and her experience was immediately apparent in the way she discussed operational procedures. Sarah, your selection for this program is based on natural abilities that can't be taught, Captain Rodriguez explained during their first meeting. But natural ability without proper application can be dangerous to yourself and others. My job is to help you understand how to use your skills effectively in real-world situations.
What can you tell me about the kinds of missions we conduct?
Captain Rodriguez considered the question carefully.
Black Talon operations are typically situations where conventional military approaches aren't feasible or appropriate.
We handle threats that require precision, discretion, and the ability to operate independently for extended periods. Sarah's first mission briefing came exactly 72 hours after her selection, delivered in a secure conference room by Colonel Morrison and Captain Rodriguez. The operation involved intelligence gathering in a foreign country where a terrorist organization was reportedly planning attacks against American interests. Your objective is to infiltrate a suspected terrorist training facility, gather intelligence about their capabilities and plans, and eliminate key leadership targets if the opportunity presents itself, Colonel Morrison explained, pointing to satellite photographs of a remote compound. The facility is located in mountainous terrain approximately 50 kilometers from the nearest friendly forces. You'll be inserted by helicopter and will need to hike to the target area under cover of darkness.
Extraction will occur at a predetermined location 4 days after insertion.
Captain Rodriguez added, this mission is classified as extremely high risk due to the hostile environment and the likelihood of encountering enemy patrols. You'll be operating alone, with no backup available if complications arise. Sarah studied the mission materials, noting the detailed intelligence reports, topographical maps, and equipment lists. Everything about the briefing emphasized the serious nature of what she was being asked to undertake. What happens if I'm captured or compromised during the mission, she asked.
Standard protocols apply, Colonel Morrison replied. You carry no identification that links you to Black Talon or even to the U.S. military.
Officially, you don't exist while you're deployed. If something goes wrong, we'll make every effort to extract you, but you'll be operating under non-official cover. The weight of this responsibility began to sink in as Sarah realized that her first mission would take her completely outside the safety net of conventional military operations. She would be entirely dependent on her own skills and judgment, with lives potentially hanging in the balance based on her decisions. Preparation for the mission consumed the next 2 weeks. Sarah worked with Captain Rodriguez to study every aspect of the target area, from the layout of the suspected facility to the cultural and political background of the region. She memorized faces of known terrorists, learned to recognize various weapons and equipment, and practiced infiltration techniques specific to the terrain she would encounter. The equipment provided for the mission was unlike anything she had seen during training. Her rifle was a custom-built precision weapon with an advanced scope and suppressor system. Her clothing and gear were designed to blend with the local environment while providing protection and functionality in extreme conditions. Remember, Captain Rodriguez told her during their final briefing session, this mission is about intelligence gathering first and target elimination second.
Don't take unnecessary risks for the sake of completing secondary objectives. The night before her deployment, Sarah called her parents from a secure phone system.
She couldn't tell them where she was going or what she would be doing, but she wanted to hear their voices before undertaking her first operational mission. Mija, you sound different, her mother observed during their conversation.
More serious, maybe more grown up. I'm doing important work, Mama.
Work that I'm proud of. When her father came on the line, his tone was more direct.
Sarah, are you taking care of yourself? Are you being careful?
Yes, Papa. I'm being very careful, and I'm well prepared for what I'm doing.
There was a pause before he continued. I'm proud of you, Nija. Whatever you're doing, I know you'll do it with honor.
After the call ended, Sarah spent the evening writing letters to her family members and friends, to be delivered only if she didn't return from the mission. The process forced her to think about what really mattered to her and what she wanted people to remember about her life. The helicopter insertion took place in complete darkness, with Sarah being dropped at a landing zone 12 kilometers from her target area. As the aircraft disappeared into the night, she found herself alone in hostile territory for the first time in her military career. The hike to the observation position she had selected took nearly 4 hours, during which she encountered no enemy activity but remained constantly alert for signs of danger. The terrain was challenging, with steep hills and loose rock that required careful movement to avoid making noise. When she reached her chosen observation point, Sarah established a concealed position that provided clear sightlines to the suspected terrorist facility. Through her scope, she could see guards patrolling the compound and lights indicating activity inside several buildings. Over the next 2 days, she gathered detailed intelligence about the facility's operations, photographing personnel and documenting patterns of activity. She identified several individuals who matched descriptions of known terrorist leaders and observed training activities that confirmed the site's use for preparing attacks. On the second night, an opportunity presented itself when one of the high-value targets she had been briefed about appeared alone in an isolated part of the compound. Sarah had a clear shot and the certainty that eliminating this individual would prevent future terrorist attacks. As she prepared to take the shot, Sarah experienced the same sense of absolute clarity she had felt during training. Time seemed to slow as she made final adjustments for wind and distance, controlling her breathing and focusing entirely on the precision required for success. The shot was perfect, eliminating the target instantly and silently. Sarah immediately began preparing for extraction, knowing that the terrorist organization would soon discover the death and begin searching for the person responsible. Her extraction occurred without incident 2 days later, and she found herself back at the Black Talon facility being debriefed about her mission. The intelligence she had gathered proved valuable in preventing several planned attacks, and the elimination of the terrorist leader significantly disrupted the organization's operations. Colonel Morrison personally conducted her post-mission briefing. Sarah, your first operational deployment was executed flawlessly. The intelligence you gathered has already been passed to relevant agencies, and the elimination of that target has likely saved American lives.
Thank you, sir. It feels good to know that the mission made a difference.
It did make a difference, and it won't be your last opportunity to do so.
You've proven that your selection for this program was the right choice.
Captain Rodriguez added, your performance in the field exceeded my expectations. You adapted to operational conditions quickly and made sound tactical decisions under pressure. That kind of adaptability will serve you well in future missions. Over the following months, Sarah completed additional missions that took her to various parts of the world, each one presenting unique challenges and opportunities to use her skills in service of national security. She worked in urban environments, wilderness areas, and hostile territories, always operating alone but never feeling isolated due to the extensive support network available to Black Talon operatives. Her relationship with her mentor, Captain Rodriguez, evolved into a genuine friendship based on mutual respect and shared experiences. Elena became not just a professional guide but a trusted confidant who understood the unique pressures associated with their work. The hardest part of this job isn't the physical danger or the technical challenges, Elena told Sarah during one of their debriefing sessions. It's maintaining your humanity while doing work that most people could never understand or appreciate. Sarah's reputation within the Black Talon program grew as she completed increasingly complex missions with consistent success. Her natural marksmanship abilities, combined with her tactical thinking and ability to adapt to unexpected situations, made her one of the most effective operatives in the program. 1 year after her selection, Sarah received a promotion to sergeant and was assigned as a mentor to new candidates entering the program. She found herself working with soldiers who reminded her of her own journey from doubted recruit to elite operative. During a selection exercise that mirrored her own experience, Sarah observed a young man who was struggling with confidence despite obvious natural abilities. She approached him during a break between exercises.
You're overthinking the shots, she told him. Trust your instincts and let the weapon do what it wants to do. The advice helped the candidate improve his performance, and Sarah realized that she was beginning to pass on the wisdom that had been shared with her. The cycle of mentorship and development that had shaped her own career was continuing through her involvement with new operatives. 2 years after joining Black Talon, Sarah was promoted to staff sergeant and given command of a small team of operatives working on coordinated missions. The leadership responsibilities challenged her in new ways while building on the foundation of skills and judgment she had developed through individual operations. Her team included Sergeant Lisa Chen, her friend from the original selection process, and 2 other operatives who had joined the program through their own challenging paths. Together, they completed missions that would have been impossible for individual operatives while maintaining the precision and discretion that characterized Black Talon operations. During one team mission that involved coordinating the elimination of multiple terrorist leaders across different countries, Sarah found herself thinking about how far she had traveled from that day when her fellow soldiers had mocked her request for a precision rifle. The doubt and ridicule that had once stung so deeply now seemed like experiences from another lifetime. Master Sergeant Collins, who had remained involved with the program as an instructor and evaluator, sought out Sarah during a visit to the training facility. "Sarah, do you remember what General Hayes said when he first observed your shooting? Black Talon mark." "I still don't know exactly what that meant." Master Sergeant Collins smiled. "It meant that he recognized something in you that even you didn't know existed at the time. It meant that you had the potential to become exactly who you've become." The conversation made Sarah think about the journey that had brought her to where she was. From a doubted recruit struggling with standard equipment to a team leader conducting classified operations around the world, her path had been shaped by moments of challenge that revealed hidden strengths. 3 years after her selection, Sarah received word that she was being considered for promotion to the senior leadership ranks within Black Talon. The position would involve oversight of training programs, mission planning, and the selection of new operatives. During her interview for the promotion, Sarah found herself sitting across from General Hayes, now showing more gray in his hair but still possessing the same penetrating gaze that had changed her life years earlier. "Staff Sergeant Martinez, you've exceeded every expectation that was set for you when you were selected for this program," he began. "Your operational record is exemplary, and your leadership abilities have been proven through successful team missions." "Thank you, sir. This program has given me opportunities to grow in ways I never imagined possible." General Hayes leaned back in his chair. "I want to ask you something, Staff Sergeant. If you could go back to that day when you first requested a precision rifle, knowing everything you know now about where it would lead, would you make the same choice?" Sarah considered the question carefully, thinking about all the sacrifices and challenges that had marked her journey. She thought about the missions that had taken her away from family and friends, the risks she had faced, and the weight of the responsibilities she had accepted. "Yes, sir." Without hesitation. "Can you tell me why?" "Because this work has allowed me to use every ability I possess in service of something larger than myself. I prevented tragedies, protected innocent people, and served my country in ways that make a real difference. The personal costs have been significant, but the opportunity to make that kind of difference has been worth everything." General Hayes nodded with approval. "That's the answer I hoped to hear. The position I'm offering you will expand your influence and your responsibilities. You'll be shaping the next generation of Black Talon operatives and helping to plan missions that will protect American interests around the world." 2 weeks later, Sarah received her promotion to gunnery sergeant and her new assignment as deputy director of Black Talon operations. The promotion ceremony was small and classified, attended only by her immediate supervisors and fellow operatives who understood the significance of her achievement. As she stood at attention while General Hayes pinned her new rank insignia to her uniform, Sarah thought about all the people who had shaped her journey. Her father, who had taught her that a rifle was an extension of the shooter's will. Her mother, who had encouraged her to pursue her dreams despite obstacles. Master Sergeant Collins, who had recognized her potential and provided crucial guidance. Captain Rodriguez, who had mentored her through the transition from candidate to operative. Most of all, she thought about the mocking voices that had once tried to limit her aspirations. Private Johnson, Corporal Stevens, and all the others who had laughed at her request for a precision rifle now seemed like unwitting catalysts who had helped push her toward her true calling. In her new position, Sarah found herself responsible for evaluating new candidates and making decisions about who would be given the opportunity to join the program. She approached these responsibilities with the understanding that a single moment of recognition could change someone's entire life trajectory.
During one candidate evaluation session, she observed a young woman who reminded her strongly of herself years earlier. The candidate was smaller than her peers, struggled with standard equipment, but demonstrated flashes of extraordinary ability when conditions were right. After the formal evaluation, Sarah approached the young woman privately. "What's your name, soldier?" "Private Amanda Foster, ma'am." "Private Foster, how do you feel about your performance today?" "Honestly, ma'am, I know I can do better. The equipment doesn't feel right, and I think I could prove myself if given the right opportunity." Sarah smiled, remembering similar words she had spoken years earlier. "Private Foster, would you be interested in some additional training opportunities that might better suit your abilities?" The conversation that followed would mark the beginning of another soldier's transformation from doubted recruit to elite operative. As Sarah watched Private Foster's eyes light up with possibility, she realized that her journey had come full circle. The girl who had once been mocked for requesting a rifle had become the woman who could open doors for others facing similar challenges. The path that had begun with doubt and ridicule had led to a position where she could ensure that natural ability and determination would always have the opportunity to flourish, regardless of initial appearances or conventional expectations. Years later, when Sarah looked back on her career, she would remember that first day at the rifle range not as a moment of humiliation, but as the beginning of everything that followed. The mocking voices that had tried to limit her had instead pushed her toward discovering capabilities she never knew she possessed. The words "Black Talon mark" had indeed marked her, but not in the way she had originally understood. They had marked her as someone destined to exceed expectations, to prove that true ability could emerge from the most unlikely circumstances, and to demonstrate that the right person with the right opportunities could make a difference that extended far beyond their own achievements. In the end, Sarah's story became one of transformation, not just her own, but the transformation of everyone whose path she touched as she rose from a doubted recruit to a leader who shaped the future of one of the military's most elite programs. The precision that had once been dismissed as impossible became the foundation for a career that protected countless lives and served the highest ideals of military service.